Good evening. Welcome to the Talkback for Ohio State Murders. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Hope you just enjoyed the show, and we're so glad that you decided to stick around and have a conversation with us about the play. We'd love to hear your questions. Put those in the chat, and we'll definitely get to them this evening. We have some amazing panelists that I'd love to introduce you to. Many of them will look very familiar. Let me start by introducing you to Faith Artis. Faith portrayed Suzanne Alexander in Ohio State Murders. She's a senior majoring in theater. She is super excited to be part of the first Black playwright show in Annie history and wants to pursue more education in African American theater in the future. Hi, Faith.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Now I get to welcome back an alumnus of our program. It's Bernard Farquharson. He's a returning theater graduate, class of 2016. He played the role of David. He now works in television, teaches acting in his local country of the Bahamas, and is currently working on season 2 of Goombay Kids, a kids show on Bahamian national television that he co-created. Welcome, Bernard.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for joining us from all the way in another country. Although we have discussed it's relatively close.
Really close.
Really close. Yeah. I'm so glad you're here. Let me bring in Tiara Ashurst. She is the hair and makeup designer for Ohio State Murders. She's a sophomore, exploring biology and biochemistry. She is so grateful to have served her community and worked on a show that showcases the talent that Black people have. She hopes that this show will touch many people and influence the decisions they make in their everyday lives. Hi, Tiara.
Hi.
Now I want to introduce you to Jolana Mitchell. She played Iris Ann and Mrs. Tyler. She is a freshman and strives to double major in theater arts and childhood education. She is overjoyed to have you all view her and her cast members' performance that they have worked so hard on, and hope you guys enjoyed the show. Hi, Jolana.
Hi. Thanks
Welcome
for
to Rollins. Welcome to the Annie. Welcome to the theater department. And finally, our special guest for the evening. This is Papa Koji. He is a senior majoring in biology and communication studies. He is the president of the Black Student Union, a resident assistant in the Lakeside neighborhood, and vice president of Crew. Thanks for coming, Papa.
Thank you so much for having me. And on behalf of BSU, we're so excited just to have this opportunity. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. I have our first question from a fellow virtual theater maker. The transition between in-person to virtual theater. So if anyone wants to start us off by talking about making virtual theater, we'd love to hear more about it.
Okay. I guess I can start with behind the scenes type things. Cool. It was really interesting doing a show that was when people were so far away. This was the first show that I ever did a hair design for, and previous to me coming to Rollins, I'd never done any theater of any type before. So this was a nice change. It was certainly very different. I had to think about designs differently and not get so tied down in one specific design. And, you know, I think with the beauty of doing shows online is that everything's malleable, everything's ever changing. You're finding out new things about what Zoom could do. At the beginning, we didn't know that Zoom could do black and white filters. Everything was going to be all in color. And so we had one design and I had a separate makeup design, and then we switched to black and white, and then my design changed. So I think that there is a beauty in having limitations that force you to be creative in different ways.
Awesome. Actors, do you want to speak to connecting over screen? Jolana, what about your first play at the Annie being over screen?
It was different for me, especially from the whole audition aspect to now doing it just fully virtual, it was completely different. I remember, going up and doing my slates in front of, just the directors face to face, more of an awkward, connection, more nervous. But, virtual, I kind of felt less nervous than as usual as I do with like auditions and then, standing on a stage in front of a million people. Now it's like recording. So it's way easier. I can, redo a scene. I can, if I mess up, it's fine. We can always, redo something. And it's, it was different, but in a way better in some ways.
Bernard, what about returning to the Annie in a virtual space? What was it like meeting a whole new generation of students online?
Yeah, no, actually, it's exactly a whole new generation because 2020 makes 4 years since my graduation. So, no, I was thinking about this while you guys were talking. I wasn't part of the in-person production. I came on with the virtual production because I wouldn't have been able to be in the show if it had been in person. So this was actually quite advantageous for me. But it's been so amazing coming back, and I've been working more in film and television since leaving Rollins. So it's been so cool to kind of merge those worlds and come back to the Annie as a theater performer in a screen media format. So that was really interesting. I'm just so glad to be working with the Annie again and getting to meet all of these incredible students who, I said this last night as well, but have a level of maturity and gravitas and talent that I do not know that I had in 2016 when I graduated. But it's great to see. And I've thoroughly enjoyed myself.
This next question is also from Nicole. She said, what is it like being part of a monumental play like Ohio State? Papa, I'd love to hear your perspective on, there's so much happening on campus, I'm sure. I remember when we came through this summer and said, this title's happening, like, you're not the only one who wants a meeting with PSU right now. So I'd love for you to talk about this summer, what it's been like to be president of the Black Student Union at Rollins in this monumental summer.
Sure. Yes, I will say busy is the word for it. I think, it was great just having just a flood of people reaching out. And the question I would get was, how can I help? How can I help? How can I help? How can I help? And a lot of it really was just trying to incorporate Black stories and social activism into what the departments were already kind of doing. And so it was great actually getting, communication from you about, hey, this is our vision and this is what we want this semester to look like in regards to Annie Stripped. And, being able to play some small part in, trying to get Black actors, out to audition for the show and have people, being able to represent. I think it's so important. And even the little things like at the beginning of school, the Black Lives Matter sign that was out in front of the Annie, I think just adds to, just kind of the piling on of support. I think this summer we saw a lot of polarity. People were on both sides. And we saw a lot of people, become more ingrained in their, previously held beliefs. And we saw a lot of people become more active. And I think just the statement of Annie Russell is having a Black woman playwright for the first time. And here are Black actors and students that are making a stand while practicing their art. I think it's momentous was a great word, and I think that's what was used in the comment and in the question. And so really recognizing that like history is being made right now that's one of the reasons I really loved watching this play. So kudos to all of you guys, because it often it feels a little bit hopeless, right? Over the summer, you'll see kind of waves of support like coming in and going back, and then every time there's a new viral story, it can feel like trauma. It can feel like you're hopeless. It can feel like there are not people supporting you, and so plays like this bring hope. is what I'm trying to say. And so we really appreciate the work that you do and the dedication that you have to your craft and your art.
Thanks for partnering with us, Papa. I'd love to hear from you all, from your perspectives as well, being a part of really what was a historical moment for the Annie and what came with that.
I personally was so humbled to be able to be like in such a large and important like space. I usually do not play lead roles ever. I'm usually the comedic relief or the token. So that's usually my job. But I was so grateful and happy that this is one of the very first times that I could like take on a role that that was far beyond myself, and I was able to actually fill the large shoes that is Suzanne Alexander. And I loved the process. It like, even though it was like such a what seemed to be like such a large, like monumental endeavor, I still appreciated every moment. It was a joyous and like grateful type of journey. So that's all I have to say.
I think I really enjoyed the way that we all banded together with one thought in mind and one end goal. I said this last night about us being in different lanes and going in the same direction. We all played different parts. We all had different pieces in this show. And yet still behind the scenes, you guys didn't get to see all the behind the scenes work, but still behind the scenes, even if you weren't in a scene, you threw out ideas, respectfully, you threw out ideas to maybe we could do this, maybe we could do that. And I was in no scenes. So I was kind of just always available to watch and throw out my own ideas. And there was a very comfortable space created with allowing everyone to be creative and give ideas to Hillary, our amazing director, and have her receive them, take them in, and then make a decision from there. And even if she, said that she didn't want to go with your idea, Bernard said this, it wasn't in a way that it was like, you don't know what you're doing, like whatever. It was in a way that it's like, okay, I see what you're saying, but I actually want to take it in this direction. And we had very long meetings after the rehearsal process where we would talk through a lot of different ideas. Well, after the rehearsal process, we would talk through things. And it was just a really big collaborative effort from everybody. I don't think it's very often that you get to work on a team where everyone is pulling their weight equally. We've all been in group projects where there's that one person that just like refuses to do any work ever. But it wasn't like that here. It was very collaborative from everyone, and you could tell that everyone wanted to be there, and so that dedication of wanting to be there clearly shows in our work, in my personal opinion.
And mine too.
I want to jump on that to raise up Tiara a bit, because she's way too humble to say this herself. But speaking of those ideas, Tiara had the incredible idea to feature the names of parents of people who have been killed by police brutality in that scene where Kathy was kidnapped. Those names that you saw were names of victims in this past decade of police brutality. And that was Tiara's idea. And, to Hillary's incredible credit, she created a space that was so collaborative. I think that's one of the most monumental things about this play as well. In addition to the subject matter, is just how collaborative and innovative it was. And I just wanted to make sure you got credit for that one, Tiara.
Thank you. I also, I believe I said this last night as well, but Hillary, even though she's not with us on screen, she is that director that, like I said, pulls up. She knows she has a seat at the table, and she pulls up all the other chairs for everyone else to sit and gives everyone else a voice, which is so big at a PWI.
We have a question from Sam Clark, who did the incredible editing. I probably shouldn't say how late she was up, because they'll probably be like, shut that department down. Let those students sleep. But she was up quite late putting that together. Sam said, what was the process like for you all to create your characters in this new setting? What were your processes like tackling such a heavy but important topic? Yeah, Bernard.
Well, first of all, Sam, incredible person. She was also our stage manager. She
Oh, right. I forgot that
yeah,
too.
that's okay.
The weeks leading up to the editing.
Yeah, she was also the person who arranged our positioning. She did the editing in like 2 days. She's incredible. So thank you for that question, Sam. I would say that one of the most interesting things for me to create my character was understanding that all of our characters were projections of Suzanne's psyche and their ghosts from her past. So coming at it from the perspective of maybe not playing David Alexander directly, but playing Suzanne's version of David, the David that swooped in and sort of saved the day per se. And so it was a very idealized, very romanticized depiction of this character that then gets that the glass kind of gets shattered a little bit towards the end when you find out the role David played in keeping things from her. And so for me, that was really kind of wonderful because I got to sort of play almost the quote like Disney Prince type kind of swoop in, be the nice guy kind of character. So in terms of tackling the heavy topic, I felt like I was quite lucky that I got to play the levity a bit in this. So I'd love to. I think you guys should hear from the other characters who, especially Faith, who did have to dig deep into that subject matter and that trauma.
I'll go next. With this question, this process was hard, but at the same time really easy, if that makes sense. It wasn't like I had to go searching for my spirit animal in order to understand like racial injustice. So it was a process that took a lot of just thinking and a lot of understanding like the weight of like what I'm doing. I found that this process like definitely was like like not traumatic, but it was very much like it wasn't a good time. Like there were times where I was just like, man, this sucks. This is a bad time. But that's what had to be done in order to be able to portray this character with the amount of respect that needed to be there. And I really paid attention to like the points of light in her life, such as like Iris Ann, which Juliana played beautifully. And I really focused on those in order to offset the amount of darkness that was in the room as well. And I found it very easy because I had such a loving cast, and a cast that was there to support me and be there for me when I needed it. They were the main ones yelling at me, like, drink water. And I was like, okay, I guess one more scene. No, go drink water. It's like, okay. So I don't think I would have been able to do this play any justice without the cast, like my fellow crewmates, the Tiara and Hillary and everyone. I would not have been able to do it. So yeah.
I guess I'll go on to add on to this question more. For me, the process was very different. Without like face-to-face contact, it felt harder for me to feel like I was doing it good enough as if it was on stage or if the screen was in front of me. And yeah, I had my ups and downs with, getting through the production and everything. But at the end, I feel like I really pulled it together, especially like with the help of my cast members and, following through and practicing as much as I can, especially my bomb violin skills. And it was a lot of fun for me, especially I felt very at home, being inside my home. And I felt more comfortable building my characters, being around the stuff that I love. So it gave me more of a power to be intertwined with who the characters I played. And with the topic as well, it's very eye-opening and it's like a great first production to be shown, especially the beginning of the year, something fresh, something eye-opening for everyone to look at. And I feel very honored to be a part of a production as good as this and to be able to relay a message very dear to me, something I fight for, stuff that I look back on, stuff that I read about. And it's a good way for us to get the message out there and have everyone else tune in as well in a fun, creative way.
Absolutely.
I would love to ask a question to my fellow panelists, actually, because since I graduated in 2016 and you guys are currently at school, graduating this year or just started, Joanna, right? Um, this is the first play by a Black playwright, and it's 2020, and I graduated in 2016, and that was actually a fact, a statistic that hadn't even crossed my mind before joining this production, you know. And myself having a Black Bahamian father and a Chinese Malaysian mother, I also realized too, to my knowledge, there hasn't even been a play done by an Asian playwright. So this is so monumental in so many ways, opening a door that some of us didn't even know was closed. And I wonder, for you guys who are current students, even if you're going to be leaving at the end of May, in the middle of May, what hope does this give you for the future of the Rollins Theater Department, for the future of Black and BIPOC stories here at Rollins, and just, you know, in general in theater?
I'm gonna go first with this one. I feel like it's just gonna go up from here. Rollins is trying their hardest to really intertwine a lot of different cultures and aspects that we as people really do need to look at and build on. So like how they just started adding the first Latino fraternity. They're taking steps, and sooner or later they will eventually reach a peak, but it's going to take some time, and they are trying their hardest, especially with a playwright just like this one. And I feel like with me being a freshman by my 4 years, I hope there's more plays like this and more, especially with, even Muslim written plays, even anything Chinese, Asian, that we can just get more of a culturally diverse, entertainment field, and even all around campus.
Yeah, I think Rollins is taking a lot of steps in the right direction. There always comes a point in history where you have to answer for your actions, whether they are mistakes due to you doing things on purpose or mistakes due to you just simply not knowing. And I think that a lot of mistakes that have happened in the past are due to lack of knowledge. They're not due to Rollins just being malicious and wanting to close us off purposefully. But, you need to cater a lot to who's there. And it's majority a white school. So you're going to cater towards, your demographics. But I think that Rollins is starting to realize that, hey, if we cater towards these smaller demographics, we can have more support from them. We support our stuff. Minorities, we come out, we support. I know for me, if I see a majority white show and there's like one Black, one Asian, one Hispanic, I'm going to watch the show because that's just support right there in and of itself. And I think that is something very special in the way that minorities pull together to help their own communities, in the way that we pull together. I got called in just in the middle of the summer, like, hey, do you want to do this? And I knew that at some point, even though I'm not a theater major or minor, I knew that at some point I did want to design hair. And for me, I knew one of the first things that when I came in my freshman year and I saw Faith, that I wanted to work with her specifically with hair. That was one of my big goals, was to make sure that in at least one production, she got to feel like she was important and taken care of when it came to hair and makeup. So I'm very glad that I got to check that right on off my bucket list for life. And that I got to check that off for a lot of other people because, after Rollins, you don't know who you're going to encounter and, what sort of settings you're going to be put in where you may not have this exact same thing that we had, the vibes that we had during this production. And so I wanted to make sure that at least one production they got to feel this way. And I hope that I did make everyone feel very comfortable and very able to collaborate with me and talk things through about their characters. I didn't want to box people in to my idea of their characters. I wanted to let people explore their own ideas about their characters. And there's even something to be said about that. So I'm hoping that as time goes on, I get to do more shows where I get to help out fellow minorities, all minorities, because when you go into a room and there's no one that looks like you, okay, you might count the people that look like you. You say there's no one. You start checking off the list of minorities. Like, who is most likely to help me out in a situation? Who's most likely to stick up for me? I need to know exactly what I'm walking into. And I think when you don't have that, especially in such a theater can get very emotional. You know, you pour a lot of yourself into it. And if you don't have the right people backing you up, you can dig a hole that you cannot get yourself back out of. Not speaking from experience with acting, but this is what I've seen, that you can dig this hole that you just cannot get back out of. And support is so important, especially with minorities going to a PWI. So I think that just us pulling together, more of us pulling together is the way to go. And you can't say no to a mass of people who are telling you that this is what we want and that this is what can come of it. Just the amount of people that have seen this production alone, it shows you that people do support this. You know, you don't have to be afraid of, oh, we won't sell. You will sell, because we'll be there in the stands watching. Even if, you know, you don't get cast, you're going to go and support your people. And so I think that is going to be, that realization is going to move Rollins even further in the right direction.
Absolutely agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I love everything people are saying. As I was thinking about your question, Bernard, really looking back at history, I think progress when it comes to social justice and representation, all of this, some years it feels like it's a standstill, right? And then there are some periods where it feels like everything happens all at once. And for Rollins, I think that is really the case. My first few years here at Rollins, I can't really point to many things that happened that made Black people feel more accepted on this campus. However, from maybe spring semester last year through the summer till now, there's been an explosion of support. And I think really what has contributed to that has been agency by our community. So we've seen students who, you know, usually just stay in their dorm room by themselves, just, you know, kind of a homebody, become this like super like active, just like posting all on social media, going to protests, like doing all this stuff, becoming so much more visible in their own communities. And at Rollins, we've seen students do that. We've seen teachers, professors, we've seen staff members, community members. And so really the hope that I have for Rollins is that our community will continue to push, right? I think there was a lot of, unfortunately, the truth is that your rights, your representation, your, you know, agency will not be given to you for free. If it was, we wouldn't be in this situation, right? And so getting our community to be, one, empathetic, and then take that empathy and move it towards action, to push our community towards the right direction, to push our administration towards the right direction, to advocate for ourselves, I think is really what is going to keep Rollins in this direction. And I say that you know, I think it's going to be the community rather than the community that's going to, you know, keep this explosion, keep this wave going. But at the same time, I find that sad. And I find it sad because I believe that it is the responsibility of the organization, responsibility of the school to care and advocate for its members, right? And so my goal is that Rollins as an institution would begin to overtake its members in advocating for themselves. And I think that's going to be a stretch goal. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I think that the beginning of it starts with Rollins departments taking initiative on themselves to do things like this, to increase representation, to tell these stories that they didn't have to tell or nobody told them to tell, but they, you know, feel like a moral obligation and a social obligation to represent their constituents. And so, to answer your question, I hope, you know, if in 4 years when I come back, there's going to be, oh yeah, we did this black play, we did that black play, we did all these different things. But I really think that our students it has been shown this summer, and one thing it has shown me for sure is that the community has the power to make change, and we have to keep believing that.
Thank you so much, Papa. I mean, it's so great to hear that you and Tiara have such hope because, like you said, when you come back in 4 years, I hope it's gone even further. I expect it to go even further. But you're so right in that the onus is not upon the oppressed to solve the problems. It's the onus is on the systems of oppression. It's so true, and I think that's why it's so amazing what the Rollins Theater program has been doing after a group of students. And we were so thrilled as alumni that they actually invited us also to join in with this group, this action group, in order to, lay at the feet of the theater department, our stories, our struggles, and give and say what we think should happen. And the Rollins Theater Department, Chelsea included, have been working hand in hand with us to enact the change that's needed. And I think that's amazing because I love what you said there, that you have hope for the future, and you think that the only way is up because of the momentum. Because I do remember, because I was a student at Rollins in 2014, it was my sophomore year, and the year started right after the killing of Michael Brown, right? So this was the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I remember, regretfully, I did not participate in any Black Lives Matter protests. I was one of those people who saw that people were not open to it and did not participate, did not walk, did not march. But I remember just the hopelessness after that of people who did stand in the dining hall and with Black Lives Matter signs, and the way they were treated by some people. And I think just between 2014 and now 2020, so much has changed. So much has changed, at least on Rollins campus, at least in terms of the conversation. So thank you. That really makes me feel hopeful for the next 6 years, or even the next 2 years, honestly.
Tiara, you mentioned going to a PWI, and I wonder the similarities in young Suzanne and Iris Ann, their experiences at school. Did you draw similarities between their experiences at a PWI 70 years ago and your experiences now?
Yes. So when I first moved in, I lived in Elizabeth Hall my freshman year, good old Liz. And there were, I want to say there were maybe 4 of us Black students, and we were kind of spread out, and my roommate was mixed. And so she pulled very heavily to one side or the other with the things that she liked, just things that she enjoyed, and finding herself like, oh, should I like this because I'm half white, or should I like this because I'm half Black, and things like that that happen when it comes to mixed kids. But as for us kids that were fully Black, there was like, I think 4 of us, and so it was very weird and very odd, just kind of walking down the halls, and it's like, oh, it's just me. And I didn't go to very many things in general for like our dorm things that we would do. I didn't go to very many things. I didn't make a lot of friends in my dorm. A lot of the friends that I made were in classes, and I met a lot of people on social media, but I didn't really make a lot of friends in my dorm. I didn't really talk to anybody. Nobody kind of went out of their way to talk to me. And my RA lived right next to me, so I talked to her. But then, like, as all the people around us, like, they didn't really talk to me, and I didn't really talk to them. And actually, both of my roommates were mixed. My other roommate, she was half white, half Vietnamese. So it was just very interesting. I think the feeling of being left out of a lot of things was very much so what Iris Ann went through and Suzanne went through, feeling left out of just things that you see people doing. You're like, oh, I want to partake in that. But then you're like, they probably won't accept me. When it came to, oh, are you going to be in a sorority? It's kind of like, well, I don't think they're going to let me in. So I just didn't even go out for any. And just, it's little things like that. Like, I wear my hair naturally curly, and even that is a very big thing, because I still see a lot of, and there's no good hair. there's no type of hairstyle that you have to wear, like, oh, you have to have natural hair, or oh, you have to have straight hair. But even I find a lot of Black women on campus very afraid to wear their natural hair out. And I get a lot of comments on it, and a lot of, it's just little weird, like, uncomfortable things that I get. And so I think that feeling of just kind of being uncomfortable, and that puts you on edge in every situation where you kind of have to play defense all the time, and you have to like overanalyze comments. Like, is this a race thing? Is this a ignorance thing? Is this just you being inquisitive? Like, you kind of have to play defense. And I think that Suzanne and Iris Ann definitely played defense a lot, and we saw a stark difference between how the white characters felt. They were usually smiling, laughing, joking, dancing, and how Iris Ann and Suzanne felt, where Iris Ann was crying for the majority of her scenes, and Suzanne was kind of just, going through her own traumas and things, and just, they were very left out. And that's kind of how I feel on campus sometimes.
You want to go, Faye?
You can go first.
Okay. I'll chime in on this as well. I have like very similar, altercations as same with Tiara, but mine are a little different in a way. I am, meeting people, but it's harder, especially with COVID, a global pandemic, trying to meet people. But then also, being an African American on campus is also another, factor in it. And, I do, notice things. I'm not just going to walk past and just like, I can hear things that, and see, out the corner of my eye. People would stop talking when I would walk past. I've only been here 2 months, and I'm not going to lie about the experiences that I've had. And it's good for me to outspeak my voice and my opinions on it, because without it, there would be no change. And just bring it to the light that I do experience things like this, and there are other students who experience things like this. And just if it's known more and more, and people would start to catch on that, hey, maybe now that more students are feeling this way, maybe we could actually, come together and make a change. Everyone can come together and put in as much as they can and create change, and not just Rollins, but the whole community as well, and not to just stop there. So there's a lot of similarities between what Iris Ann and Suzanne felt to what I've experienced on campus, walking across the blocks, and you feel like you're not supposed to be there, or the stares you get when you're walking to class, or when you walk into a classroom and you're the only person of color walking in there. But some people are very, nice and talk to me, say hello, even in my hallway, but not really more than that. I can't really blame them, but it will get better. I feel more with COVID gone, because that's a major factor, but it'll change. It'll get better.
I find it very interesting that Suzanne talked so much about escape and isolation. And I think it's because most of the time when people expect you to be in a PWI, it's supposed to be an escape from the stereotype almost. Like you were finally away from what people expect you to be. You get to be your own self, but in a way, it forces you into a box. It forces you into a monolith that I feel Suzanne definitely portrayed within her, or Adrienne Kennedy definitely portrayed within her play. I think when you're talking about what it's like to actually be one of the only people within your department, because me personally, before Jolana and Tiara were a part of our theater department, it was, I think, me and Ma, who were literally the only two Black people in our entire department, and roles were scarce, and it was very hard for people to, it was very, like Tiara was saying, was like you had to be on the defense, like things that people would say that were kind of microaggression-y, like would be like, well, are you challenging me, or what's happening? Without also having to fall into a stereotype of like, well, I can't say anything now, they're gonna do something. And it's like, these are all the internal thoughts that, you know, sometimes people just don't end up having, they don't have to think about them. And so it was hard for me to relate to other people in instances when I'm thinking about whether or not someone is like actually being rude to me because of like the color of my skin, while everyone else is worrying about whether or not they're going to FIDS or like, so it's like, so it was almost like an intellectual like isolation, I would say. And very similar to how Suzanne was very much on edge around Bunny, but at the same time, she looked up to them. It's that internalized hatred almost, where you're like, you want to be in that group, but at the same time, you're like, wow, they don't like me, and it's because of who I am. So I feel like there are a lot of, specifically like being in a PWI, I feel like there are a lot of specific similarities, and I think that's what made it so easy for me, at least, to draw in that, like, oh wow, this is sad. Like, it was very easy for me to already pick from that because I already had those instances happen. So
yeah, no, I just wanted to speak a little bit from my experience as a, you know, person of color on campus. I never felt my Blackness until I was at Rollins, because I grew up in a predominantly Black country. I grew up in the Bahamas, and it's 85% Black here. So if anything, I felt very Asian growing up here, right? So I never understood that feeling of otherness and of until I got to Rollins, and I saw how much it really informs your place on campus, or the expectations put on you. And that to me is just, it was very eye-opening. But I also had, you know, unlike you guys, and it's a privilege that I bore, I had kind of an escape from it. I had a bit of a veneer, or kind of something that shielded me from it, which was my passing privilege, right? But no, I definitely, I think there's this expectation and this sudden feeling of, especially coming from a country like I did. Like, okay, let me speak about my father, who's actually watching this right now, probably. He was the only Black person at his college in Prince, Cape Breton Island in Canada. The only Black person in his whole college. And so I think sometimes about him and his experience there, and what it's like to look around and not see yourself, because even representation, which I think this play is so important for, and so important to help people who have these strange sort of, you know, feelings about us as people of color, to really see that we are not the products of the media portrayals that we see of, you know, people of color. Because that was also very shocking to me too, because growing up here on our TV, I see people that look like my father all the time, and then I moved to the United States, and that was just not the case. So yeah, I can definitely relate to those feelings.
I think even with mixed kids, there is that sort of passing that you guys get, but then there's also the burden of, well, where do I fit in? That you guys have to take on that we don't. And it can be very damaging. We talked about it a lot in our early discussions about having that white face, that white mask that you put on to appease other people. And for mixed race kids, sometimes it's a white mask, sometimes it's an Asian mask, sometimes it's a Hispanic mask, and being able to blend in. But it's like that idea of like, am I blending in so much that no one can see me at all? And I feel like sometimes I'm not mixed, but I feel like sometimes that is how they feel, just from what I've been told, is that, you know, you don't see a lot of stories about issues that mixed kids face. You see a lot of this category Black, this category Asian, this category Hispanic, this category white, but there's not a lot of blending. And I don't think that reflects our society. We have a lot of blending of cultures, of races, of religions. There is a lot of mix. There's a lot of blending happening. And it leaves out an entire large group of people who then never get to work through their trauma by seeing other people work through their trauma.
Yeah.
And I think that theater and television is an escape for a lot of people, and even books and artwork is an escape for a lot of people. And so if you don't get to see, oh, this person actually got through it, this person got to the other side, then how can you have hope for yourself getting through the other side? And I think as Black people, we see, okay, our ancestors got out of slavery, they got out of Jim Crow, they got out of segregation, they got, out of a lot of things that happened to them. And yes, we still have a lot of obstacles that we face, but we have seen other people get out of this. And I don't think that mixed kids have gotten that chance yet. And I'm hoping that it is on the horizon, but I just don't think that it has been represented in the way that it can be and that it should be.
I think a lot about the issue of mixed children too, with relation to Suzanne's children, because there's that moment when Aunt Lou wants them to stay and come to New York because she knows that life would be better for them in New York than in Columbus, right? And there's this idea that is still pervasive now that mixed children are a novelty and something that technically shouldn't exist, because up until the 50s, it wasn't legal to be in an interracial marriage, right? And so there's also this feeling of not being entitled to the struggle or the privilege, which is kind of why when I was a student at Rollins, I was told all the time, and not by other people of color, but by white people, like, oh, but you're not Black, that you don't have to, you're not, you know what I mean? Like, you're like us, or it was saying, well, you're not like us. So I didn't even join the Black Students Union, which I regret so much when I was at Rollins, because I didn't feel entitled to it, So I think there's a kind of undercurrent of that, and it makes it even more difficult for Suzanne and her kids, her babies, and her what would happen to her children when they grew up and were mixed in this world. But yeah, well, thank you for touching on that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm processing all the great conversation that's happening right now. I think for me, the process of being Black, young, and in college in America, in a PWI, is all about finding and defining what your identity is. And that journey for me has been, it started really when somebody who was then the president of Black Student Union, I didn't know it at the time, but he complimented my jean jacket that I was wearing, and I complimented his Jordans. And then we struck up a little friendship, and he invited me to a BSU meeting. And that is when community at Rollins really became something I owned. I think before we all know, or we've kind of talked about it in this circle, in this discussion, of feeling like the other, feeling isolated, feeling like the world was not designed for you. Me personally, I was born in Ghana. So this is an African country. We moved to America. We actually lived in Columbus for a good while. And I remember my middle school in Columbus being one of two Black students in my grade. And coming to Rollins, it is not a unheard of sight. It's really common or surprising, actually, to walk into class and see somebody else. Oh, they're Black, or oh, they are from some sort of different identity than what you see. And the difference, I think, for how do Black people thrive? How do Black people survive in this world where we are the other? In this world where I'm actually thinking back to the play. One of the things I remember was just how the writing, when Sue would talk about these things that are so bleak and sad and traumatic and important, it would just be very flat. It would be very straight to the point. It wouldn't be very flowery. It was just kind of like, this terrible thing happened to me and I couldn't do anything about it. Let me just say, this is what happened. Right. And I think a lot of times that's all we can do, is to accept the world as we live in. Not a lot of times that's all we think we can do, right? Is accept the world that we live in as these are the facts of life and I can't do anything about it. And for me, that's where I was for a long time until I was able to find a community that showed me this is what Black success can look like. And for me, that was BSU. And being now a leader in BSU, it tugs on the heartstrings to hear other people's stories of, I didn't feel accepted. I didn't have a community. There wasn't anybody there for me. And so that's what I would encourage just everybody to do as we wrap up, is just to, number one, if you are a person of color here at Rollins, find your community. I think that it's been great just to, even in our talks behind the scenes, before everybody kind of came here, just to see the camaraderie and just the laughter that we were sharing, that I've got a privilege to share with the theater community, right? But whichever that is for you, maybe it's BSU, maybe it's not, to find that. And if you're here as an ally, maybe you're not Black or not a person of color, to be able to advocate or kind of push your Black friends or your people of color friends, just be cognizant of the fact that what you see as acceptable, normal, and friendly may not be the same case for them, right? So being able to just kind of show them opportunities, if you know, right, and encourage them, be cognizant of the fact that their community might be elsewhere, and supporting them in finding that. I think that college can be the best 4 years of your life if you are supported in your identity. And that is the whole goal for BSU. That's the whole goal for me. And I know for this theater program, you guys have been doing such a great job of that, and starting with this play right here. So I've been so grateful to be a part of it at this point. Yeah.
It's been such a privilege to hear from you all tonight. I know Faith said her computer was doing something weird, so
I think it died.
Faith, if you're somewhere watching on your phone or something, we miss you. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and for sharing about your experience and ultimately for sharing Ohio State Murders with us. Have a great weekend. Appreciate you guys watching it at home.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Good
night,
night.
everyone.
Have a good weekend.